It's the Anfield Wrap on Radio City Talk. Neil Atkinson, John Gibbons, Andy Heaton, and we're joined by Chris Pajak from Redmen TV, making your radio debut for us at least. Chris, I don't think it's your radio debut. Full stop.
No, I don't think it is, actually.
I think you've been filtered across the airwaves and been...
Sure, he's in demand.
Most definitely.
Yeah, they're always knocking at the door.
Aren't they? But you've deigned to take our calls, and here you are, joining us here on Radio City Talk with you until 7:30 on your Friday evening. Got a couple of songs for you as the show wears on, but it's mostly us talking about the Reds. But before we get stuck into them, we'll have a little chat and ask you what your favourite incarnation of the League Cup is. Liverpool go to Burton Albion midweek next week. What's your favourite incarnation, Chris? What's your what's the one you remember it as?
The one that holds most with me is the Coca-Cola Cup. Just Steve McManaman single-handedly winning it. That's the one that sticks out. I was about 13 at the time, and I think I knew more about football then than I do now by a country mile. So I knew everything about football then. So the Coca-Cola Cup takes me back to that time.
Okay, Mr. John Gibbons, what's your one that sticks out more than any other?
I would say the sticks out more than any because it's probably too young, but a cup sponsored by milk is a lot to be said for. Just generally, you don't get enough of that. Like, you know, why isn't the FA Cup sponsored by sausages? You know what I mean? Just generally, I like the fact that the milk lads have got together and thought, you know what? There's no point us competing here. Let's just sell milk. As long as we're selling milk, we're all winning. And they've got together and they've done that, and fair play to them. So yeah, a whole type of food sponsoring a football trophy has a lot to be said for it. And Liverpool won it 4 in the bounce.
Andy, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm with the milk cup. I just love the idea of the milk board getting together and go, right, here's the market budget for this year, boys. What you reckon?
Lash it all on Ian Rush.
I wait for them. Tell you what, that advert in popular culture is not going anywhere anytime soon, lads. Yeah. To the point that we don't even need to reference it, apart from possibly for the overseas listener.
Just on Chris's answer, I'm bang with him. When I was 12, 13, I could tell you pretty much. I could identify every player in the league, tell you what boots they wore, what goalie. You know the question is sport thing where they obscure a footballer.
Yeah.
I could tell you what footballer it was.
So
absolutely,
Andy,
just by combinations of either gloves, shin pads, and boots.
Andy, who's going to play up front for Burnley this weekend?
Danny Ings.
£5 a month. The Anfield Wrap. £5 a month. Everything that you need there, all that sort of stuff. It is. We will talk about Burnley in the second half of the show. We're going to be speaking to Tyrone Marshall from the Lancashire Telegraph about Burnley. He knows who plays up front for them, and he's going to tell us, and he's going to move from there. But it's the opportunity that's opened up. That's the most exciting thing for me. John, you were really bullish about the Arsenal game. I suspect you were less bullish on 38 minutes.
Yeah.
But you were really bullish about the Arsenal game. You fancied the Reds to do something there when they go to Arsenal. There's a point here, isn't there, which is that Liverpool are now in a great shape to be able to imagine themselves first home game at Anfield against Leicester on a minimum of 6 points, maybe even on 7, possibly even on 9. You know, the 3 aways out the way, and then getting into that big September break in good shape. That's got to be the determination now for Jurgen Klopp and his lads.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was the aim. I'm sure they wanted to start fast and hit the ground running. That's why you have the big summer. That's why you work harder than everyone else. It's not just, you know, the kind of idea is really, you work hard in the summer, then you get your awards in April or whatever, you know, when the season's going and others are faltering. I don't really think that's how Jurgen was thinking. I think he's going, you know what, we're going to be fitter first day. And that's what they looked to me against Arsenal as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if they look at it against Burnley. I think it's going to be a tough game against Burnley. Obviously a different sort of game against Arsenal. They won't quite have the quick passing that Arsenal had and the little triangles that were kind of cutting us apart at times, if we're honest, in that first half. But, you know, it's going to be tough to go. They're going to be looking forward to, you know, to hosting Liverpool, and it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a different sort of test of our mettle, really. But we have got the superior quality on the pitch this time, and so there is the opportunity. But also, you know, if it is tight, they'll be saying what apparently the first thing they said in half time in the Arsenal game was, "Remember, we're fitter than them." And I'm sure that'll be the message again if it's say 0-0 or 1-1 a half time. We all hope Liverpool are winning, but if it is, I'm sure there'll be a message again. Don't forget, we'll be fitter than them, and I expect that they will be. And a real opportunity, I think, is developing for this Liverpool team just to kind of steal a bit of march out of everyone. And then hopefully when everyone's looking around, you know, end the transfer window, still trying to get players in. You know, we are sitting pretty on a nice number of points.
It's worth pointing out as well, you know, it is the idea of feel-good factor. There was a feel-good factor around Liverpool before the Arsenal game. We went out to the States, Chris. We were all there, and there was a feel-good factor in terms of the vibe around the club. When we were spending time around the club, it felt like there was a feel-good factor. The vibe around the games, those pre-season games, there was a feel-good factor, and you could actually directly compare it to Arsenal. It's keeping that feel-good factor going for as long as possible, and it's certainly being there on September the 10th at 5:30. I think that's what all Liverpool supporters should want anyway. But more than ever, you know, delay playing that first game at Anfield, you want it to feel like it absolutely bangs from minute one.
Yeah, of course you do, Neil. I think one of the advantages to actually having 3 games away from home to begin with, for me, is something that Klopp did with us a while ago. He challenged us as fans to be there and greet the team whenever. If we've got 9 points in the bag before the first game of the season, let's say, and Klopp's challenged us to be better fans, to go and greet the side when Leicester come, to go and greet the side when whoever comes to Anfield. If we've got 9 points in the bag, there's something already riding on it, because you don't want to lose that position. So for me, I think, this game at Leicester, if we've got 9 points in the bag, could be the G up again to sort of add on to that feel-good factor for all the Liverpool fans.
Got to get there, the land, and that's the key thing. But John's mentioned there Burnley. It's not just Burnley, and it's also the mass panic around Mane. There was the idea that it was dislocated his shoulder. I think he was going to be out from any period from 7 weeks to 4.5 years at times on the internet last night.
Had to send them back
the other night. Yeah. to send them back to Southampton. It's calmed down. It looks like it'll just be Burnley, and even Burnley may be touch and go. But that's because it was such an exciting debut. Again, this idea of the feel-good factor's there, but it does feel like it's on a bit of a precipice all the time in terms of, Mane, if he'd have been out for 4 weeks, everyone's head would have gone down, and then that's why the team have got to keep performing.
Yeah, and you can't look for excuses, and I know everyone got hysterical, but we've got a good squad now for the first time in a long time. It feels like, we beat Arsenal without Daniel Sturridge up front. And we went in without Matip, not fully fit, without the first choice, I think, goalkeeper. So I don't Emre Can. I don't understand the mass panic. I will temper that by saying I'm approaching Burnley with a bit more trepidation than I am Spurs, only because every time we had a great result last season, we'd follow it up with, if we had played 2 good teams on the spin, you'd fancy us.
Yeah.
But if we go and, you got the high of Arsenal and then you go into Burnley, I think it's a real acid test. It's a real acid test. And if we can get one against Burnley, I think confidence will be absolutely skyrocketing when we go to White Hart Lane.
It is that, it does feel big. Andy's right to refer to it as an acid test, really, John, putting back-to-back results together, and also unfashionable results last season. For instance, it was punctuated by too many Newcastle aways and Watford aways. What do you think you'll have learned from those games last season? We'll talk more about how to approach Burnley itself later on, but what do you think the manager will have learned and taken from those games?
I don't know. I think we'll have to wait to see. I wouldn't be surprised if he picks a slightly different team. Like everyone's saying that it'll be the same 11, but he might think could it do with a bit more of a physical presence up front. I think it was the Watford game when he went with 3 smaller lads. I think Firmino played up front that game. I'm pretty sure he did, and he just sort of couldn't get in it really, and they were struggling to keep it. And I think someone who can just hold the ball up for you, who can just run some channels. If it is quite tough out there, there might be an asset, and maybe Mane dropping out if he does makes a decision for him. But I wouldn't be surprised anyway if he went for maybe in Origi and then Sturridge to come on kind of later in the game, just to give a bit more of a physical presence up front and someone who can kind of hold it up. And then in midfield as well, he might be tempted by Sean, because he's looking at the midfield they've got, and they did okay, and obviously when we were on top they looked great, but there was times when we weren't. Then maybe a bit more of a physical presence might be nice, so he might look at that. And if he does do that, then I think he'd be showing that he looked at it last season and thought maybe we just need to be a bit bigger, maybe we just needed to be a bit tougher. And it's all well and good having these nice players and these players who are kind of better than the opposition, on the ball, but if you can't get them on the ball, then it's tricky.
It's all very fair points there from John, Chris. All very fair points indeed. And those games last season, they will be playing on his mind. He knows, but he knows how you win a league. I mean, say what you want about Jurgen Klopp. He knows what you need to do to win leagues. And one of the things you need to do is you need to get genuine momentum week in, week out, build a fear factor. But you've got to win the right to play. And I think that's the thing that might have almost shocked him last season was how much and how often and how repeatedly you then have to go and win the right to play in these games in the Premier League. That it is, you don't just you don't do it in 5 minutes, and you don't just do it early, and you don't just do it a couple of times and then sides fear you. And last season was a great example, because it really did feel like anyone could beat anyone up and down the country. And at least until it settles down this season, it's going to be exactly the same way. Everyone's going to feel as though they can get any result against anybody.
Oh, of course, Neil. I think the Premier League, that's what we love about the Premier League, isn't it? As a Liverpool fan, that's what I kind of hate about it, to be honest with you. I want us to go back to being the flat track bullies. I think that's something that we've not had since 13-14, where we've consistently beaten teams lower down the league.
And not often enough before then.
Exactly, and it's something that's been symptomatic of our club for the last 20 years, and that's something that Klopp will be looking to change, which is why I think we've got more physical, more sort of athletic centre midfielders in, and I think more options in those positions as well, because you do sometimes need to just tinker with a few little bits and pieces as you come up against these different types of sides. And for me, Mane's pace is something that we just didn't have last season. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Wijnaldum take that position just to offer us that and create space for the other midfielders like Mane's been doing against Barcelona and against Arsenal.
Really interesting stuff, Ant. Go on.
Yeah, and I think with Burnley, I'm not saying it's disrespectful, but it's easy to write smaller teams off as like they'll only play a certain way, they'll only play long ball, they won't try and play. Sean Dyche is a good manager. You look at the squad he's got. There's not many teams get relegated and come and bam straight back up. You look at how many teams go down. It's an achievement to come straight back up for him, and they will try and play football. And all this talk of Mane, even if he was fit, they're going to try and sit deep and play us on the break. They're not stupid. They'll look at that. Dyche will look at that and go, right, okay, this is where they're dangerous, so we're not going to allow to play them. Wenger was under so much pressure to try and play against Liverpool. He had to play a fairly high line. So, I agree with the shout for Origi.
We'll talk more about Burnley in the second half of the show at 7 o'clock. Onwards, as I said before, we've got Tyrone Marshall from the Lancashire Telegraph joining us, and we also will speak about it beyond that sort of point as well as we get up towards 7:30. But this is the Anfield Wrap on Radio City Talk. To go anywhere would be a profound mistake. We'll be back in a second. That was Fleetwood Mac with Everywhere indeed. Wanted to talk a little bit about, I think the bits you've written something on it this week, John, so we'll touch upon it. What's got knocked over in the excitement a little bit of the of Mane at Arsenal is that there were two other debutants on the pitch there for Liverpool, and Klavan, I think there's a couple of little moments where, and you got to remember the left back that's playing next to him, and he's not a stupid man, he's not a stupid footballer, he knows the problems that he's surrounded by, but constantly talking all the way through the half, both halves of the game, came into its second half as the whole side did, played reasonably well, and it's what you want from your fourth choice centre back, if indeed he is the fourth choice centre back.
Yeah, definitely. I think he could be rightly pleased with how he's done, considering I wrote about the real lack of fanfare when he came in, because we're so used to big prices now that anyone's £4 million. You presume he's worse than you, don't you? You know what I mean? You think, well, he can't possibly kick a ball, this fella, £4 million. But it just shows, well, first of all, that there is bargains to be had out there if you're willing to have a look and take a punt on something that's not that fashionable, but also the quality of him and the fact that he's able to come in and not look phased, as you said. He was pretty vocal as well. I thought he was good on the ball. I know there's a few question marks about him for the first goal, and I've been talking about it, a couple of people on Twitter this week, about whether he could have done better, but I think he's quite far down the pecking order in terms of responsibility for that one, really. I think he's shown already that he's going to be a real asset for this football club, and you're quite right to point out, is he fourth choice? I don't know. Is he ahead of Sakho now? I think Sakho's probably got to do a bit of work in training to get ahead of him. Joe Matip, not sure yet. So even when those guys are coming back, it wouldn't surprise me if Jurgen Klopp says, well, it's your share for now. As long as you keep doing well, we'll keep picking you.
On that it's your share thing, and the idea of, I've already, this is the problem with me as a football supporter in a sense, Chris, but I've already got one eye on the Burton away game in terms of the fact that we're going to get to see some other lads. If nothing else, that's sort of, you're going to get to maybe see Matip play a competitive game and all that sort of stuff. But those games now, they're already looking like, if you're Matip, you're watching that against Arsenal thinking, that fellow does look, as John says there, he looks in possession of that shirt here. When I get an opportunity, I am going to have to leap all over it. And there's more debutants to come. Is sort of what I'm saying. The goalkeeper who Andy mentioned before. People want to get in this side. They're going to have to perform pretty regularly if you want to keep your place. You're going to have to perform as Klavan did at the weekend. Yeah,
I think that's right. And, I've not mentioned this word since Brendan Rodgers was our manager, but meritocracy. It's something that he used to talk about all the time, wasn't it? About if you perform well, you keep your place in the side. And right now, Klavan's performed really well. Look, 2 tackles out of 2, 8 clearances, 7 headed clearances. He won 3 of his 4 aerial duels.
Get on this prep.
I love it.
Blocked the cross.
Is right, Chris.
And his passing was great.
He's coming
as
back
well.
next week. Go on.
And this is a guy who we didn't have a lot of high hopes for, as John quite rightly says. I think what I spoke to a few people after he'd signed, and Keith Costigan, who covers the Bundesliga for Fox in America, said he's a really underrated player, and he's a Liverpool fan as well. He used to write for LFC magazine, if I remember correctly, and he actually said that he rated him much higher than he did Joel Matip.
Really?
And because Matip, he said, has got a clanger in him every now and again. And, you know, when you looked at the stats of Matip, when he came in, he was top or second in headed clearances, tackles, block crosses and aerial duels in the Bundesliga. And about 4 of these categories, he was one of the top defenders, and Klavan was nowhere near it. But, you know, you can't make a decision on these footballers, I always say anyway, until you've eyeballed them yourself. And Klavan looks like a good player for me. And I haven't seen enough of Matip to tell you otherwise.
And yeah, you know, it's exciting to be able to just simply watch these footballers and watch them bed in, you know, and Wijnaldum as well. He also, second half, has a good second half at Arsenal. There's Grujic, who we haven't seen yet. It's more, you know, there's lots of things that you can take from football, and the main thing that you want is Liverpool winning, but getting new players into the squad, watching them play, seeing the opportunities as they come for them, working out what the strengths and weaknesses are as a player, it's something I'm looking forward to over the next couple of games.
Yeah, I actually read something on this last week. Klopp, when he was after his first season at Dortmund, they interviewed him in the closed season, and he said, you know, what are you looking for? And why did you? Because I think they finished poorly. I think they finished mid-table or something like that. And he said, well, quite frankly, I'm expecting more out of the players that I've got, but I think without competition, they won't rise to the level that they're capable of. Which I thought was a really interesting comment. So
he's constantly about every training session, it's a competition. You're looking to reinforce yourself every performance.
No safe places, all of that.
And you can see that, I think, with the, you know, we mentioned before, you mentioned in the previous part, I was looking after the fitness of Emre Can and Sturridge. He's looking after the fitness to a certain extent of them as well, but he's, you know, Jordan Henderson, the performance of the full midfield three says to Emre Can this season, you're going to have to play at this level. The performance of that front three says to Daniel Sturridge, you're going to play at this level. Now, both of them, you'd say, Andy, they've got the capabilities of going and playing at that level, of playing better than the lads who were in those positions, but now they know that's the level, that's the marker.
Yeah, there's a standard there, and if it drops below, you're not guaranteed your spot. And I feel over the last couple of years, there's maybe been a little bit of, you know, a couple of players guaranteed the spot regardless.
It's like England.
Sorry,
just like England.
Just like, yeah, well, maybe so. I mean, I don't really watch England that much, but
it's easy to do it. It's easy to do when there's more quality.
Exactly.
And I think the problem of it maybe in the past doesn't necessarily be favoritism. It's been the fact that the manager hasn't had enough players.
Well, that's what exactly.
So the manager hasn't enough players he can trust. So if he thinks, well, you know, there's only 10, 11, maybe 12. I'm sure about them when they're fit in, and you're starting to feel now that there's a lot more at the moment that you trust that might change throughout the season for better or worse, really. But at the moment he feels like he's got a decent number that he thinks, you know what, if I can put these guys in and, you know, they'll do a good job for me, and so I think that does improve standards. You know, players have talked about it. Klavan again's talked about the fact that he feels he's raised his game just by training with better players every day and just by being around, because he knows that, you know, that he has to, or he's not going to play for Liverpool.
Oh yeah, you want to get into a situation where you know, the only player who may be guaranteed the spot is your world star, your Suarez, whose standards are peerless anyway. I'm sorry to bring his name up as an example, but, you know, you want everyone else thinking my place is secure here.
Well, I think you've got to look at as well, historically, when Liverpool have been out of Europe, the most players we've used in a league season, and that's everyone in the squad, is 24 players. And that's when we've had no European football. So you start looking at it and thinking, who are these 24 players going to be this year? Who's going to appear in the cups and stuff like that? And you break that down even further. You know, in 13-14, we probably had 14 players that we were comfortable with. I think you look at the squad now and you're looking up to 17, 18, 19 players that you're comfortable with. And I think when you're looking at a transfer window for Liverpool Football Club, and particularly this one, it makes sense if you think we're starting to play 4-3-3, because everything, you know, at times under Brendan Rodgers, you thought we were collecting players in certain positions, but it feels like we're building an actual depth chart now. With that 4-3-3, exactly.
Chris got you in to come and talk to us about footy and all that sort of stuff. But how's things going with the Red Men? What to look forward to over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, there's tons, to be honest, Neil. We've got a massive deadline day show lines up. We'll be doing a 9-hour live show over on one of our partners, Ball Seats channel. But, you know, there's constant content coming out every day on our YouTube channel. The website's going really well, where we cover stuff a lot more in depth, 45-minute to an hour long shows each week, and it's just £2 a month, so we're undercutting you, mate.
No need at all there, no need at all. We've also got coming up the Anfield Wrap, and not just the Anfield Wrap, obviously it's Cy Hughes' book, he's written it, so it's his thing, but he's asked us to join him, which is really kind of him. Him and Jamie Carragher at Mountford Hall on the 9th of September, and you're hosting it, John.
I am, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm off the floor and onto the stage, finally. No, it should be good. I think for the book looks great. I've had it half an hour, so apologies for not reading it. But it looks really interesting. Some good stuff in there that's obviously been in the papers already. And Jamie's obviously a very candid speaker. There's nothing he kind of won't talk about.
Especially in person.
Yeah, especially in person. Yeah, so he'll know that there's no cameras there on the night. It's just between us in the room. Basically, I was chatting to Chris about this before and about how footballers, especially someone like Jamie, was it's just between us in the room, and he'll get into things, and it doesn't really feel like with him or side that there's anything off bars, and he was great on the 90s, but obviously this is more his time. This is when he was winning stuff for Liverpool, so it's gonna be really, really good, and it's only a fiver, and they'll sign books. A couple of people have asked me, are they going to sign stuff? Obviously.
Yeah, they're going to sign stuff, yeah.
Yeah, on the signing thing, yeah, just the books though, so don't be turning up with your mum's wardrobe or something like that, because that's not getting signed, because that actually happened.
Or through the door.
The last time we done it, you had a couple of fellas turning up with like BHS on the back, and it wasn't great. They'll be good. The book, I've not read it, but I've had a description off site, and I think, and all this stuff's always great, but you're looking at possibly the most debated, and intense periods of Liverpool history in living memory. You're going right from the Hicks and Gillette, the Moors, Paddy Sale, Hicks and Gillette, blah, 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 going through when we were the number one ranked team in Europe to the inevitable fall from grace. I think it's going to be a cracking night.
There we are then. So get down to that 9th of September at Mountford Hall. Should be absolutely phenomenal stuff, and the book itself should be terrific. I'm looking forward to reading it as well. This is the Anfield Wrap on Radio City Talk. After the break, we're talking to Tyrone Marshall, and he, as I said before, he doesn't just know who plays up front for Burnley. He knows who they've just signed. He knows what to expect. He's got everything you need about Liverpool's trip there at the weekend. Every week on Tour Player, we do the Friday show. The Friday show is your 80-minute or so look at the weekend's games to come, plus a few stories from away games gone past for Liverpool Football Club. And it's a fantastic piece of work this week. We've interviewed Robbie Scotcher to talk about Crystal Palace and Pete Selby to talk about Leicester. But we did about 40 minutes talking about Liverpool going to Burnley. And within there, we have the following interview with Tyrone Marshall, just to set the scene for the conversation we're going to have in a minute here on Radio City Talk about Burnley versus Liverpool. But also, just so you can hear from Tyrone, really talking loads and loads of sense about Burnley's summer, the game last weekend against Swansea, and also the weekend to come. Here he is. Yep, I'm now talking to Tyrone Marshall from the Lancashire Telegraph about Burnley, about the start of the season, about the summer that they've had. And I think the first thing, Tyrone, before we get on to the game at the weekend, is that, like last time, Burnley have, broadly speaking, are looking to do this with the same group of players, at least so far, unless you think there's going to be a bit of action towards the end of the window. Yeah, so far, I would expect a bit more action, to be honest. I think they still need a little bit more quality. I think it's been a difficult summer for them, really. Obviously, they lost Joey Barton at the start, and I think there's money there to be spent, and everyone knew it was there to be spent, but they found it difficult to do the right deal. So they've had bids rejected left, right and centre. Central midfield's been a big issue for them, and it's been a real sort of struggle to get those deals over the line. Well, they're happy to pay fairly decent transfer fees. Wages are an issue for Burnley. They don't want to pay 40, 50 grand a week to players, risk coming down and then be stuck with those wages in the Championship. They're a very careful club when it comes to the finances. So I think they've struggled in the market this summer with that, but they've made strides this week with the signing of Stephen Defoe, which is a really good deal. Yeah. And I would not be surprised if 2 or 3 more at pretty decent fees come in over the next couple of weeks, to be honest. Is there an issue? I mean, I think that this has been an issue for almost every side right the way across this window, and I would almost argue it was an issue for United until and it was one of the things that actually held up the Pogba deal, is that I think players these days and agents, they're sort of aware there could be a better deal just around the corner, or there could be something else just around the corner. You've seen it with Everton and Witsel, Liverpool with Goetze. As I say, United and Pogba, I think the delay was Pogba's probably thinking to himself, you never know, Barca or Real Madrid might come in for me here. And I think, is that happening to Burnley obviously at a significantly lower level, that there's this awareness that, until they begin to look like a club that's, gonna ensconce themselves in 13th, there's a number of players, whether it's at home or abroad, who will look at it and think, well, they're offering me a good offer, but at the minute, firstly, I've got no guarantee that offer's still in place this time next season, and secondly, I've got, you never know what's just around the corner. Yeah, quite possibly. I think that's a challenge that faces a lot of promoted clubs. I mean, with Four, that's one they've been working on for a lot of the summer, I think, and it did seem that he was going to end up going to Qatar for quite a while, but they struggled to get a deal with Anderlecht. And I think from what people in Belgium were saying, he certainly preferred the offer from Qatar, probably because it was an awful lot more money. And I think his main concern was that he wants to play in the Premier League. At the moment, there's no guarantee he's going to be playing in the Premier League for 2 seasons. It might be 1 season and back down you go. So I think that's a real battle. I think the transfer window encourages people to sort of, bide their time, really, and wait their time. And
also, I think it's been tough to do a deal with clubs this summer because the broadcast deal and the TV money has changed the landscape so much, and I don't think clubs really, I don't think anyone's got a grasp on what value is in the transfer market anymore.
I know that. I think there's no getting away from that. I think that, for instance, you look at just as an example. I mean, the high-profile example from last night was the idea that Chelsea are going to spend 60 million on Koulibaly. The idea that looking at 60 million pounds for centre halves just feels absolutely wild. Whether no matter how good a player he is or isn't, and he doesn't. Whenever I've seen him, and I'll be honest and say it's not that often, he doesn't look to me like the reincarnation of Franco Baresi. He looks a good player, but he doesn't look like he's going to redefine what you're expecting from a centre half. But no one knows if that's a good deal or a bad deal. I think again, to pull it to a Liverpool perspective, Liverpool spent 34 million on Mane at the start of the window. You're not sure where the value is there, if Liverpool may be overpaid. And then Everton spent 25 million on Balassi, who's not scored as many goals for Crystal Palace as Mane did for Southampton last season. And so, it's quite it is difficult. And I think it must be harder again for sides like Burnley to, because they won't take the chance. They won't just sort of plump and say, well, we think that this one could end up being worth it. They're always going to be responsible. They're not going to move from that, are they?
No, that's it. They've got to make sure they get the right deals. I mean, the value, you only sort of realise value once the transfer's done. They broke their transfer record signing before this week, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it go again. I think they'll be after another central midfielder, and they've had 3 bids rejected for Dale Stephens at Brighton and for Jeff Hendrick at Derby, and they've struggled to get deals for those players. But there's talk now of maybe 8.5 million for Hendrick, but it's one of those where you're only going to sort of know if that's been worth it at the end of next season. If he has a stormer next season, helps Burnley stay in the Premier League, then, fantastic deal. If it doesn't work out, then, it's one of those, it's a lot of money for a club like Burnley to commit to. So there's probably, a little bit of uncertainty of, they've got to make sure they get the deal spot on. Some of the bigger clubs, they get a transfer wrong. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good, but you can easily move on for it. At Burnley and a lot of the smaller clubs, it's probably not so much the case. And certainly when you're not used to spending that amount of money, spending £7-8 million on a player for Burnley is uncharted territory. The boards are all local businessmen, so for them there's probably a bit of like, we want to go ahead with this one. It's all a bit of a nervousness to commit to it.
Of course, no, completely understandably. I mean, the game at the weekend was, for a side that in the second half of the season last season where, they were a little short of imperious. Someone once sort of remarked on me that there was a point in April where, you'd have fancied Burnley to get a result against Leicester. They looked at times that good, and they looked as though they had those battling qualities. I think the season, a lot of that was down to the fact that I think you said, Jordan last season, that Dyche had conditioned them towards the idea they were going to have a strong second half of the season.
Yeah.
But the problem that you've got now is that the Premier League can move very, very fast. It's a big defeat against Swansea. It's the sort of game that could well be in March of being cited as a 6-pointer, if you know what I mean. And to lose it to a late goal, a point would have been all right. It at least means that Swansea don't steal a march. To lose it to a late goal must have been a blow for Burnley. But Swansea had been the better side. Yeah,
they had. There was a lot of endeavour from Burnley, and first half was very poor, but second half they were a lot better. They created a few chances, but the better moments of real quality came from Swansea. When you step up from the Championship to the Premier League, I think that's what you really notice. Where in the Championship, there's a lot of tight games where the endeavour and the fight can get you over the line. In the Premier League, there's more quality. Swansea's threat down the wings, especially, was clear to see. They put together some really good attacking moves, and while they didn't create chance after chance, there was always the sense that one might be enough. I think. It was kind of a reminder to Burnley that perhaps they do need a little bit more quality if they're to survive. The attitude's fantastic, the spirit in the camp is fantastic, but at the Premier League level, it's all about that highest level of quality.
The other thing I noticed from the lineup was that he plays, 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1, however you want to phrase it. He plays Graham Vokes, is what I'm driving at.
Yeah.
I mean, do you expect him to maybe do that against Liverpool, or do you think that one of them might have to hit the bench and he'll go to something? He'll look to shore it up a little bit in the middle of the park, maybe even give Defoe his debut?
I would think he'd do the same against Liverpool. I think he'd play 4-4-2 every game, to be honest.
Right.
He's very loyal to that formation. In the Premier League last year, I think there was one, and 2 years ago there was one game that didn't play 4-4-2. They kind of played just one up front at West Brom and lost 4-0. And he says playing 4-4-2 and going for it and trying to grip the game suits them. The makeup a 4-4-2 only really works if you've got players who are going to run for their lives, which Burnley have. They're a real hard working side, so they can kind of, cover the ground that 4-4-2 leaves exposed between the lines a little bit. But obviously in the Premier League, you've got to work that even harder. But yeah, I would expect 4-4-2 again this weekend. Vokes and Gray up front again this week. I think Defoe will come in for his debut. David Jones, who played last week, has left for Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
This week. So Defoe, I'd imagine, Defoe's been playing for Anderlecht, so he's fit and up to speed. So I would imagine he will go straight in for his debut as well.
Do you see there being any other changes, or do you expect it to be the same back four, the same front two? Do you think the only change will be in midfield?
I would think that'd be the only change. The other possible one is whether you bring the Icelandic lad Gibbons, who signed in the summer, in for one of the wide men. He was on the bench at the weekend. I think he'd probably be on the bench again. Other than that, at the moment, team probably picks itself, which, while Dyche is loyal to his players, it's probably not ideal. At the moment, it's a fairly simple decision on who to play. You probably need a little bit more competition and, a little bit more uncertainty in the lineup, which would suggest more competition. So
fundamentally, it's whilst there's and it won't be an easy game. I had a little look actually at the 14-15 Burnley stats, and it's fascinating really to look at the home record. I think it's played 19 and drawn 20. Played 19 and only conceded 21, but they only scored 14. Yeah. Across those 21, and and they only won four games at home throughout the whole throughout that campaign. But what's interesting, if you know what I mean, about that is that it's easy to say, and we are going to be saying on this show that this is a game that Liverpool, if they've got any serious ambitions of anything, this falls into the you won't win all of the games that you'll say you should be looking to win. No. If you know what I mean, that never happens at any season. But this is a game that Liverpool really should be looking to win. We've been talking about that. We talk about that across the board, but this is your key marker, really, isn't it? Is that Liverpool can expect a tight game, they can expect a close game, but I think from the sort of noises you're making, you'd expect Liverpool to take it by 1 or 2 goals.
You think so, yeah. I think Liverpool will have to work hard for it. I don't think any team will come to Turf Moor this season and get an easy ride. Burnley will make it, a physical game, tough game. You expect in games like this the greater quality to show. But 2 years ago, some of Burnley's best results came against the teams who were up there and fight for the title. They took 4 points off City, they drew at Chelsea. The Liverpool game at Turf Moor a couple of years ago on Boxing Day, Burnley were probably unlucky not to get something out of that. Yeah. Could very easily have got something. So it's potentially a game that might suit Burnley. The pressure's off. But I think it will be tight margins. You'd expect Liverpool to get the victory. But I think Burnley are desperate for points. The problem that cost them 2 years ago was their start when they didn't win to the 11th game. So the sooner they can get some points on the board this season, the better.
It feels like to me, just to sum it up, Tyrone, this game at the weekend, it feels as though it's the sort of game that's going to be defined by the first goal.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Burnley get the first goal. They are very good at defending a lead. They're so well organised, so compact and hard working at the back. They're very good at the defensive record 2 years ago and last year was really good. So when they can get in front, I think it would be huge for them if they can take the lead in enough games this season. Then they'll get the points. If they go behind, like you say, they don't score a great deal of goals, especially in the Premier League. It's very hard for them to get back in games from behind. Okay, huge thanks to Tyrone Marshall there from the Lancashire Telegraph. Let's get back to everybody else. That's Mysterious Ways by U2. Whilst playing the music sort of stuff, I want to give a shout out to the Red Bull Music Academy, spreading its wings right across the city from the 6th to the 9th of October. Jamie Woon, Moody Man, Crepton Conan, Hooney, Kenny Dope, which if you're as old as me is exciting, Reggie Snow, Loyal Kana, also pretty cool, Young Marco and Greg Wilson. John, it's a big deal this really. It's never come to the city before, the Red Bull Music Academy. It's going to be 6 to 9, taking in loads and loads of the city's buildings and venues.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely boss. I've seen a few of these quite recently. Saw Loyal Kana, who's like a young rap. He's a Liverpool fan actually. He's boss. So this is a connection. He's a Liverpool fan. He's absolutely incredible, really exciting talents. And obviously Greg Wilson, who feels like a Scouser now, feels like one of ours. So it's a homecoming. He played the Liverpool Loves a few weeks ago. Really, really good.
Everyone's head fell off, really, didn't they? There was lots of people who were staggering away from Greg Wilson, covered in sweat,
which is the way it should be. Yeah, so it's going to be boss. So nice one to those guys for coming to Liverpool. It's going to be good.
Excellent. We'll do more of that sort of stuff, talking about that on the Rider and Rewired sister shows to the Anfield Wrap. Moving forward then with Burnley against Liverpool, you were talking about it more, gents, and I was quite intrigued actually, because I've been speaking to other people about this game, Chris, and no one else was making, there was a lot of talk of you might do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. No one made the shout of Wijnaldum to right mid, to right wing where I was, and yeah, I can immediately see the case for that. It gets Emre Can back in the first 11, means that there's pace and there's a release ball for the rest of the side, moves Henderson higher up the pitch. You can see how that works.
Oh well, yeah, exactly. You've basically
took it all off you.
Took it all off me. No, I think just to to flesh it out a little bit. I think it's important for me that Chan gets minutes again now, and I think that's his position in sort of the base of the three. I think Adam Lallana is brilliant at winning the ball back high up the pitch, and I've enjoyed his 2 performances there, and I'd keep him in that position. I think the natural inclination would be to move Lallana further forward, but if you end up with something like a 3 of maybe Lallana, Firmino, Coutinho, there's just no pace there for me, and that's why I said that I think maybe Wijnaldum would move over to the right, keep Coutinho on the left, and then it's your choice of Sturridge or Origi. And personally,
Firmino.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think Klopp's given a sort of hint that Sturridge will be involved. I just think that Daniel Sturridge is one of those strikers who will score against all of the teams. You know, he's a 1 goal a game striker rather than a brace every 3 games or something, and I think he'd like to score against that. Although I do think, that Origi is probably going to be our number 1 striker come the end of the year.
Stick him in neck out a little bit. Well, maybe not, because Daniel Sturridge's strength is when he's in the box. I don't think there's a better striker in the league at the ball at the feet in the box who can create something out of nothing. We've seen it time and time again. Maybe with his injuries, he's not the one to break from the halfway line, which may be, as we go on, an issue for him under Jurgen Klopp if he can't regain that. But if you're looking for someone to get, as Chris said, you're looking for a striker to get a goal when nothing seems on, he's your man, 100%.
Which makes him a good option to have, of course, because if we're looking at this game and saying, well, there's a possibility where it's 70 minutes, we've got all the ball because we're a bit fitter. They're sitting back thinking a point's not too bad with the result we've had, but you can't get a breakthrough. Then I don't know. You'd rather throw Daniel Sturridge on than almost anybody in the country, wouldn't you? So really good option to have. Whether that's enough for him long term or whether that, is what Klopp wants long term. That's not to say, just because it's his role at the moment, it'll necessarily be in a month's time. He's looking to get him fitter, get him stronger, and I'm sure he'd be quite happy to use him more. But, if you're talking at the weekend, I don't think he will start Sturridge. But as I say, what an option to have on 70 if you've got that issue where they're getting deeper and deeper, and like Andy says, he's able to use his feet round the box, and he's one of those strikers who can just make space out of anything, which is, a real asset when there seems like there's 12 men behind the ball.
It's the idea that, we know what Burnley are going to do to a certain extent. They'll play 4-4-2. They'll keep it tight. They'll be compact, Andy. As the game develops, it's a first goal game, and that's the case with lots of Premier League football. But I think this one more than ever, Burnley did not score a lot of goals last time they were up. So if Liverpool get ahead, you feel as though space will open up, and maybe it then becomes a sort of a 2-0 for Liverpool. But Burnley lost 1-0 last weekend. You feel like that's in the future a lot. What would you go with? What are you expecting more accurately? I'm not going to ask you to pick me a team, but what are you going to do for me in terms of an approach? Do you want to see Liverpool start fast, try to play across the 90, play in bursts? What sort of stuff are you looking for?
I never saw that coming.
Big question.
Blimey. I don't know. The first five will be indicative. How I like my football. I like to go with them from the start. Caution to the wind, and have the attitude of, if you concede one on the break or you concede the sloppy one, well, you know what, deal with it. And with this side's proven that it can go with that. Where we tend to come unstuck, even against teams who don't tend to score a lot of goals, is sometimes last season when we've gone 2 up and then got a bit complacent.
The other thing that I completely agree with that from Andy, Chris, but the other thing that struck me as well last season was we didn't start fast that often. You look at, for instance, Watford away, we start slow, we concede early. Palace away, we slow out the blocks. Newcastle away, slow out the blocks. When we're dropping down the league, if you know what I mean, the expected finish in the league, we haven't sort of gone, right, where Liverpool, cope for this, get this first 30, cope with us for 30 minutes. We haven't done that really. I wonder if that might be a change this season.
I think that should be the change that we make. Whether we're ready to do that right now is probably another question, but I think if that is our approach, especially when we're going towards the lesser teams in the league, the ones who will finish lower down, I think you've got to start playing the way that you want to play the game. You've got to force their hand as opposed to wait to see what they're going to do and make a move. I think against Arsenal, I think it was a bit of a game plan that we knew we were going to be fitter, as John said earlier on, and that we'd come out second half and impose ourselves on the game. But against Burnley, I think not only are we fitter, but I think we've just got better quality players, and as such, we need to bend them to our will.
Yeah, we need to start giving teams a bloody nose early on, especially teams we expect to be beaten. Instead of trying to lower our, I think we've got the squad now, maybe we didn't last year, where we can force a will on our game. We can force our will on the game in so much as where last season maybe we didn't. Maybe we tried to play a little bit too much.
Scoreline very quickly, getting to 7:30, John Gibbons.
2-0 Liverpool.
Andy Heaton.
3-1 Liverpool.
Chris Pajak.
3-0 Liverpool.
A clean sweep of Liverpool wins there. Huge thank you to Tyrone for coming on, to John, to Andy, and to Chris. Redmen TV, £2 a month. Have a think about that sort of thing. We'll be back next week with the Anfield Wrap here on Radio City Talk. All the tour player stuff and the Anfield Wrap main show through the week. You know how it works by now.